All right. Welcome everybody in Women Rock Switzerland and around the world. I'm Michelle Giuliano. I am one of the co-founders of Women Rock Switzerland together with Denise Nickerson. And with Esther Berkey, we have produced an Amazon best-selling book called Inspired Journeys. And if you haven't yet gotten your copy, do go get a copy of the book. There are 31 authors that we've been featuring. And today I am so honored to be able to sit together and to bring to you some comments from Annette Ebbinghaus. Annette is a mental fitness resilience coach. She works with leaders. She's a master sophrologist and a motivational speaker. She has a bunch of cool programs, including the beChill exams and life programs for adolescents and youth and young adults. She has some ethos that I'm sure are going to come through. She is a woman of faith. She knows that the first wealth is your health. And I think it's really important to share that she began her professional career first as a civil engineer building bridges in Canada. She completed an MBA and she had a rich corporate career living all over the world in various places in Europe, but also in Singapore. I hope she'll share some more cities about where she's lived and where she's been growing. And I have reread your story this morning, Annette, and again, I'm just so touched because there are so many ways in which in life we get to fight for justice and for our rights and for our access to wealth and health, as you were talking about. And your story involves a 9-year fight for justice with kids who are 11 and 14 years old at the start, with a husband who was traveling to the Middle East, with insurance investigations and court proceedings that reached the Supreme Court of the land here in Switzerland. And you share not only about the legal struggles surrounding the renovation of a house, a dream project for you and your family, and the bankruptcies that happened as a consequence. But you also shared about how this was a path to forgiveness. And I'm sure that part of this story and your whole life is part of what makes you an extraordinary coach for resilience. Thank you so much, Annette, for joining me and being present with us today.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for having me. And actually, thank you for the team writing the book. I remember when you were calling for authors, I thought, do I, don't I? Do I really want to share my story? And I thought, yeah, I think I was probably pretty late to the book. And I said, yes, it's time for me to share my story because, people, it's so interesting. People associate Switzerland with, the trains that always run on time, which we know they don't. If you live here, we realize they don't, right? So that's the first thing. And then they think, well, but everything works so well in Switzerland. And you have this sort of false sense of security living here. And I have to say first, let me start. This is my second time living in Switzerland, and I absolutely love living here. I am Swiss. I became Swiss in 2018. So I'm a very proud Swiss. However, the experience that we went through, what I found out afterwards is it's not so uncommon. There are a lot of issues like this in Switzerland, especially in the construction industry. Ours, unfortunately, was the biggest case they had ever seen in the country. So they didn't really know what to do with us when we all began. And we were really fortunate that I have good friends that introduced us to this lawyer. I'm really fortunate that the lawyer that we were introduced to was the person that he was and the lawyer that he was and had the experience that he had. Without that, I couldn't tell you that I'd be sitting here.
Yeah, I think we I have a TEDx talk on teaming through personal crisis, and one of the top tips is to name your crisis. And when you name your crisis, you can build your expert team. And you needed a lawyer, and you really needed an expert lawyer. And I just want to compliment you and the lawyer, whose name I don't know, and we don't necessarily need to publicize, but you have, as a result of your cases and all of these injunctions, there are 2 new laws on the books in Switzerland because you fought for that justice. And therefore, you didn't only hopefully find some break even energetically, if not financially, but you've definitely saved others from similar plights by impacting the law. You've had, as a foreign born, you've had a great impact on the law here in the land, and that's honorable.
Well, thank you. In actual fact, so our legal team, they were also part of the federal government as well. So it was helpful. We had no idea how high profile these people were. I had no idea. I just needed a lawyer, and they're really good people as well. So we were really fortunate to have them. They're lawyers in Lausanne, Arne Associates, very, very good lawyers. Anyway, the one lawyer who he retired partway through our process, and that was a very traumatic experience for us, to be honest with you. It was quite traumatic when he left, but he had someone else who'd been working through the process, a junior, and this lawyer, he was excellent, and he is now in the Conseil Fédéral. And he said recently to us that there's not a day that goes by that he doesn't think about our cases. He is working to change construction laws federally in Switzerland. So I would say that the work isn't finished yet. And my husband and I have contemplated that, we really need to write a book about the story, because people really are unaware of how unprotected you are as a consumer here. Really, you're really unprotected. So, and it's not even easy to get the insurances you need and everything like that. They're just not available. So it's something that
and you assume architects and professionals have required assurances, which of course, or insurances, sorry, the French word assurance and the English word insurance. You assume that the professionals that you hire who carry a license and a degree and run an office in a fancy building, that they are insured appropriately. And so as consumers, we assume consumer protection laws when in fact they've been lacking. So that's fascinating. I want to ask you, since you are a sophrologist and a coach, and I think that part of your story is forgiving yourself about the hiring of your original architect. But have you celebrated yourself for hiring the lawyer? And what values do you think you maybe resonated with that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We definitely celebrated, for sure. We've had a couple of really amazing get-togethers with our whole team. And our lead lawyer, he took us out to one of the top restaurants here in Switzerland. You might know the one I'm speaking of. Anyway, when we walked in, they rolled out the red carpet, because, we had this guy from Conseil Fédéral and this and that on our teams. And that's when we really realized, oh, wow, these guys are, top notch. And we got to eat in the kitchen, and it was absolutely amazing. It was amazing. Everyone left. I think we were there till 3:00 in the morning. We had so much fun. But our main lawyer, he actually retired and he moved to Mongolia. And he rides horses. He lives in a yurt. He works with a Mongolian family in tourism. And he comes back often, and we always have him over. We always go out. We always celebrate. So yeah, we celebrate often. And there's been it wasn't really finished in 9 years. It continued. There were some other things, and we're still actually not done. We have one more thing that we're trying to tidy up. So each time we continue, we do still celebrate those wins. You have to. It's really important, it really is. And, life is short, so you need to celebrate your wins. And when you talked about values, the question again, is it more about the values of the lawyer, or what values were we looking for?
What values resonated with you in your selection process, or from a heart level, or how did you know that this might be the team for you?
Yeah.
Or now that you've gone through the process, what are the values that you'd put forward had you had to do it again?
Yeah, that's a better question.
Thank you.
in the moment we were we were beside ourselves in the moment, to be honest with you. And I remember our first meeting, my mother had come over from Canada, thank God, because my husband was really in the Middle East at this time. And, I can't even speak. That's how I go back to that moment. And it's like, you just didn't really know what to do. And
you didn't have a place to live. You were moving your children in plastic bags and boxes. You were living at a friend's houses, right? I mean, there was a lot to bear.
Yeah.
You were running out of money rapidly, and to recruit a team required, francs that you didn't necessarily have.
So
these are
the lawyers,
some of these words.
Yes, so some of them. And the lawyer says, the first thing he says, okay, well, we need to have a retainer. I'm like, okay, well, how much is that? And he said, 5,000 francs. And there was an expert architect there too, who I loved and still love. He's an amazing man. Anyway, so I called my husband and he's like, yeah, we have 5,000. We can do that. It's like, okay. We've spent in the whole process well over 2 million in legal fees, well over. Had someone told me on that day that that's what we were going to spend, I don't know what we would have done. We probably would have just walked out of the room, left the country. I don't know. Someone said that to me. Why don't you just leave the country? Leave the house, leave the country. I'm like, how do you do that when you have family here, your kids are in school? Plus it's like, why would you leave the country for something that you haven't done anything wrong? Everything has been done wrong around you. You don't run away from that. And I can segue into a couple of areas here. But one of the things that was really kind of earth-shattering when we were in these legal cases is we're sitting in the court in Lausanne, the Palace of Justice, and the judge, we had 3 judges. So the main judge, she says to us, she's got us in for the 3rd possible conciliation meeting, which they usually do 1. And this is years later, we decided we would try to do another one. And she has everyone leave the room. And she says to my husband and I, just to let you know, this is a court of law, not a court of God. You will never get what you want. We thought, okay, but we have to get more than what they're offering us, because what they're offering us is peanuts. Is when you're finished, it's interesting, when you're finished everything here, we had to go on legal aid. We just didn't have the money to make ends meet. And at that time, our lawyer said, there's no way you'll get legal aid. Your husband makes too much money. And we said, yeah, but what comes in and goes out, they're so unequal. What are you talking about? Like, we'd have to stop now. So we got legal aid. I said, wow, I've never seen this before. He said, our system's set up that if you're really rich, you can get through it, or if you're poor, you can get through it. But if you're in the middle, forget it. So we managed. And so that was a big step too, right? And so we get that. But when you're finished, you have to pay back all the legal aid.
Wow.
So
and was that made clear?
Suddenly, no, we had no idea. And then during the process, our lawyer also reduced his fees for us, which was great. And in the end, you've got to fix that. You have to repay everything that they discounted. So
That's
you
incredible.
get this. Yeah,
that doesn't even come up.
Settlement.
Yeah, that doesn't even come up in your story. I mean, I think that's one of the things about this book and all of these women's stories. I mean, I consume a lot of media and a lot of material. I know you probably do too in your work and your life. And one of the reasons why it was so important to make this book and to share these stories of real women and to have a whole page devoted to the bio of someone was not only to recognize the formation and the intention, but, to quote, tell your story. You have many stories you could tell, and the selection process of what to tell and what to share and how to come back to a theme that might really matter. So this theme about forgiveness, because your story chapter is titled Forgiveness, the Path to Freedom. And so I kind of want to go into your title a little bit and ask you one of the standard questions that we've been asking everybody, because Denise Nickerson and I also are coaches and executive coaches, and we run SALT Consulting and Communications. And we wanted to have at least one question that was kind of pure coaching, because we know that we can benefit from the people, everybody, the listeners and ourselves as well. We can benefit from your wisdom and the wisdom of all of the women in this book when we ask a question like, how do you turn things around for yourself when you're really feeling blocked or stymied, or when your inner voice has turned just so negative and so critical and so unloving? How do you turn it around for yourself? What do you do?
Okay, now good question, but I will tell you, I don't think I ever felt negative in that whole process, which my husband always shook his head. He's like, oh my God, why do you see the positive in this? Like, how can that possibly be? And that's because I'd done a lot of work on myself already. So I had, life experiences. Some of them aren't always so great. And I had some early childhood issues and things. And at some point when I had my own kid, I was actually working with a hypnosis NLP person. And she was saying, you need to deal with all of your childhood issues so that you don't put those onto your kids. And I thought, okay. And I was 34 when I gave birth to my first child, living in Singapore at the time. And I thought, okay, that's it. I've got to start the work. And that's actually what changed, which really altered my career. That took me from working in this whole sustainability areas, because she was saying, you got to start studying the body, the mind sort of thing, thinking, okay, really? And I did. And I was fascinated by it, and I've never looked back. It's just been my path ever since. So my kids helped really change my life, but they also put me on that path to forgiveness, because I had to go back through to my childhood and go through the traumas and figure out how I was going to do this. Now, the thing is I was sort of betrayed by a woman when I was younger, and I had this kept coming up. And in business, I'd work with this woman, and next thing you know, they were cheating. And then I would work with another woman, and next thing you know, she'd say, well, I'm going to hire my son to do all of this work. You're out. And I'm like, what? There were all these little things, because I'm a very trusting individual. So I thought, okay. So in this case, here I'd hired a female architect, and she walked the talk. She said all the right things. I'm a Reiki master. She's a Reiki master. She had all the credentials, like you said, the fancy office, spoke to clients. Everything was great. But wow, didn't know a thing really. Like, what a mess. And I thought, wow, okay, this is a big betrayal. But all the other ones, I never fought for myself. I never sought justice. And this time I thought, there's no way we're walking away. I have got to seek justice in this, and it has to come to an end. Otherwise, it's going to come back again. I've got to face this front and center. And through facing that, there were all sorts of things. I had to do a lot of self-care during our process, a lot of self-care. I had people I could rely on. I made sure I took care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally. I also had to do that for my kids, and my husband. Us as a team, we're a great team, thank God. My husband and I are a really good team. He has attributes that I don't have, and I have attributes that he doesn't have. So together, they messed with the wrong people, is what we kind of joke around about. But in around this third conciliation thing, when this judge said about, you're in the court of law, not a court of God, because we ended up not getting conciliation at that meeting. They walked away, and we thought, well, okay, here we are. And I thought, oh my God, because she told us in that thing, we'd already been at it 9 years. And she said, well, you're going to be at this 10 more years. And I just thought, what? Because we had to maintain the property, pay our mortgage, and maintain the property during all this, because it was evidence. Right. So we had rent and mortgage to pay every month. Right. And that's why ends didn't meet, because how can you do that in this country, right? Right. And our bank had put us into, I'm not even going to talk about it, but anyway, it was bad. So lo and behold, so we were thinking, oh my God, we'll never make it. Because at this point, we already were out of money. And a friend of ours had lent us a large sum of money. And that was the only way we were going to get through. And we were looking at our son going to university, and we didn't have the money for it. Mm. And we thought, my God, like, we've got to get out of this. This has got to end, or we're going to end, sort of thing. So coming back, I then have this terrible ski accident, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I started doing this integrative quantum medicine. It's a healing system. And I thought, I have got to go through, and I've got to forgive and release anything from all of these people in my life, or this isn't going to work. And I also had to forgive the architect. And I had to see the good in the architect. And I had to forgive these lawyers on the other side that all they were doing is waiting for us to run out of money. But that was their job. But I had to accept that that was their job and forgive them. And then I had to go back and forgive all the way back to the very beginning. And that actually miraculously even took me into reconciliation, which is different than forgiveness, is when you're actually talking to understand the other person's perspective, why they did the things they did, and accepting that it was their road, not my road. I just happened to be in the path. And for me to do that without shame, blame, guilt, that I think all of the work I had done up to this had set me up for that. And, in a way, the whole process, there's a gift in it, right? It was not fun, trust me, for any of us, but there was a gift in all of that, because it really brought me to that final step of reconciliation and full freedom, really. full freedom. When you just let that go, your body shifts, the energy within the body shifts, the way you think about yourself shifts. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, actually.
You've done a great job, Larry. I only have 20 more questions based on what you've said. So you've done a great job sort of laying it out. You've worked some processes in brief as to how it is you feel blocked or stymied. You said that, in fact, that you didn't really experience it negatively and that you had a positive mindset throughout. You'd already worked on yourself. I mean, you've answered it in many ways, and I think the story stands. So I'm not going to say it better than you. I think this how question is rising up in terms of, I know that there are many people who still view forgiveness as, I have to forgive them, this outward energy. And you write about forgiving yourself. And now you're speaking about reconciliation and moving towards reconciliation and being able to reconcile with those who have really caused harm. And I know that is not evident. It's not people, they're words until you learn a process or an approach to how to do it. Do you have a fast hack for if someone is listening in and they think, wow, I forgiveness feels really far off? Is there a first step, or is there a second step, or how do you get people there? How do you get people to, if they recognize that they want to do this thing called forgiveness, or they want to even go as far as reconciling with a past abuser or a circumstance that was so terrible, or someone who's dead and gone that you may not be able to necessarily physically reconcile with? I'm thinking about the story Unbroken, which is the story of Lionel Zamparetti, and it's written by a friend's sister, Laura Hillenbrand. Lisa is a friend of mine that we used to row with, who's from this region, or at least who lived here for a while. And I'm thinking about that story because he reconciled with his jailer and met that person in life. And there's a picture of them standing together. There's a picture of them in close proximity. And when I think about the greatest peacemakers of our time, and your story being a really grand story, what is the how? What is the first step for people who want forgiveness or want to invite this possibility for themselves in their lives?
I love the story Unbroken. It's so moving. It is really very, very, very moving. I will say it's so impressive. What is the first step, the first hack? I mean, it depends on where you are in the forgiveness journey, really. And I've worked with people that are, of course, on that journey because I can resonate with that. So, and you first have to start with this. It's that self-awareness of what is it that has changed within you? So what's the behavior that happens in you that was created by whatever the event was? Okay, so what's the behavior? And then if I've found the way to shift out of the behavior, great, there's a first step. But you got to start with that behavior. What is it about me that I need to change because I realize this is because of that? If you've already realized that, you have a lot of self-awareness. So, I mean, the first step is self-awareness. A lot of people just have no idea that something that happened to them before the age of 5 has impacted them, or around the age of 5 or 6, has impacted them their whole life. And I don't know if you follow any of Gabor Mate's work.
Sure.
And he talks about trauma doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a relatively small thing, but it's the way you perceived it at that age. Because as a young person, we don't make sense of the world the way us, cognitive adults do. We just don't. So that's the first step. So if you've got that self-awareness, great. If you know the behavior, great. Then you've got to go work with somebody to figure out, how do I change this behavior? Because this behavior I want to change. And once you've gone through that behavior change, then you can actually really start thinking about, okay, now I can forgive this person. Because why? Because going through this process, I've become a better person. And so in some way, all of these things that we feel burdened by, it's the cross, the way of the cross, right? All those crosses you bear, those are the things that bring you to the person you're supposed to be.
Right. That's beautiful. That really sums it up. When you joined Inspired Journeys, what pushed you over the edge ultimately? You were talking about it at the beginning of this call, saying that you weren't sure you were going to join, you thought about it. Why did you decide to write? And maybe what are you writing next?
Yeah. Well, because I felt that I was ready. I was ready, and I thought it's okay to put yourself out there, because for a long time I thought, oh, I'm not going to put myself out there, because the minute I put myself out there, you become accountable, right? And it's like, if I, do people really need to know my story? Does it really matter? That was it. Does it really matter? Everybody has a story. Why is my story any better than anybody else's story? So why should I even write about it? And then I thought, well, wait a minute though. What we went through is a unique story. It's the biggest case in the whole country, and we learned so much from it. So yes, I want to share my story. Is it clean? Like, there's always repercussions of these things. No, but that's okay. Life is like that. It's not clean. And, no matter what age you are, you're still on a learning journey. So we don't have to be perfect at any point in our life.
Has accountability hurt or helped?
It's helped. It's helped. It is definitely helped. It has definitely helped. And as I say, when you said, what are you writing next? My husband and I want to write about the whole experience, and we want to write it from sort of two perspectives, though. The perspective of what was going on, but the perspective of how do you work as a couple to get over such big traumas as a family even, right? And it doesn't have to be something like what we went through. But it's keeping the faith, because you have to really keep the faith and believe that something's going to happen. You really do. Even though it doesn't happen, you have to just keep moving forward, like in Unbroken, like that.
I think this interdependence that you have talked about your shared or diverse skill set, and being able to recognize one another's talents and skills and to use them, and to trust that the other is using them to the best of their ability. And when someone is abroad and someone is at home moving the family, to trust that the kids and that the wife is going to be okay. I mean, I think that's going to be a great next thing. I do want to ask, when you think, so you've had a big weekend. You participated in the Geneva Marathon. I know that.
Only relay though. Only the relay. I didn't do the whole thing.
But you're running. You've always been a runner. You're a swimmer.
Yeah.
You don't mind cold baths. You're an example in terms of outdoor sports. Your injury happened on the ski mountain, celebrating a big wedding anniversary. You put that in the book, and so this running event, no matter how big or how small, isn't this one of the first things that you've done past or post that injury?
Oh, it was actually a big event, because it's the first running race that I've done since 2017, when I had my ski accident. And I had a year and a half of physiotherapy. It was tough. And I really, really, really took it like my life depended on it, because I wanted to be able to run again. And I wanted to be able to do yoga poses where I could, bend my knees 100%, because my surgeon was brilliant. I loved her. But she's like, the bend you get in 3 months, that's the bend you've got. I'm like, there's no way. And I am not accepting that. I am going to get to full child pose. And I can. It hurts, but I can do it. But I ski. I ski since. I've swam across the lake just in the 1.8 kilometer, the Traverse de Genève, which I've never liked swimming in open water. So that was a big thing for me, was to swim across the lake. Started swimming in cold water, which I never did before either. And I absolutely love it now. Today I was in without gloves or booties, and the lake's about 10 degrees. But it's, again, though, you just keep looking for what's my next, you just keep growing. It's growth. It's growth. And I think my whole life is about that. It's just about growth.
I really admire how you face challenges and how you continue to put healthy challenges like cold water in your path versus.
I'll get you in there, Michelle.
Life toss up. Hey, I was there yesterday. I had my first. I've been in the water in February and March, but this year it was May. So I'm in there. I love to open water swim. It keeps me sane. I was surprised by how The cold was affecting the top of my head, even with, I didn't have an insulated hat. And I didn't have gloves. And I did see you in one of your photos with gloves. And I was like, neoprene gloves, that does make sense, but I've never owned them. So,
well, in the winter, when the lake's like 4 or 5, I need gloves. I have
rain well, or just leave your hands up.
No, I like to swim.
You want to swim.
To swim, even when it's freezing cold. And I like to swim.
I've never done that. I've taken my dive, my plunge, and gotten out. I've never, gone any distance in the winter. So yeah, you'll have to show me how to do that.
Okay.
Great. I have a last couple of questions for you before we conclude, which is, so many women are not taught to think about their legacy the way that men, even in marketing of, a watch, is thought to think about the next generation and the legacy and the impact of their life. If you could design your own legacy beyond the legacy you've already had that I can recognize and that people who know you can recognize, what would be your message for the world? What is your message if it exists beyond you, beyond space and time, here in this interview, for example? What would you say is your message for the world?
And that's interesting because I work a lot with adolescents with their self-leadership, self-confidence. And it's a group that I'm really quite passionate about working with. And it would have to be something about that. So it's more about, we really need to learn how to be more compassionate with one another and more empathetic. We see the world from our eyes. It's our life, our perspective. We know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And you can't know what you don't know. So when some energy force comes toward you, which is another human being, it's to receive them as they are without judgment. And that is something that I don't know if mankind has ever done. So it's moving us toward that, to really move toward that whole concept of, we all want the same things in life, and it's to be loved. What is it? Is it a Robbie Williams song about all I ever wanted was to look good naked or have people look, it's like, it's true. It's like, I want people to accept me as I am, and to know that, when we were in these cases, my husband used to say that he would see people on the train. He says, the first time I started thinking about, well, I wonder how that person's day is going. I wonder what's going on in that person's life. He said, I never used to think that way, but I started really thinking about, what are other people's days like? Are they happy? Is there something traumatic going on for them? How can I help them? So it's getting us all there before we're in our 50s. Like, can we not be more like that when we're younger? Teenage years are challenging. Yes, I know, you got to find your place, but can we not have more empathy then? And as parents, can we teach our kids how to be that way more so in the 20s and 30s? Can we do that? That'd be something I would be, if I could say, yeah, her program's really helped with that one thing. It'd be, wow, that's great.
And I think I think you're going to say a yes and answer to this question, but compassion for others or compassion for self?
Oh, it's both. Yeah. Yes, and it's definitely both. It's definitely both. No, I mean, we beat ourselves up all the time when we make mistakes and things. And it's, that doesn't serve any purpose, really. It doesn't.
So maybe developmentally in the life stage, when dealing with youth who developmentally do need a certain measure of selfishness, do need a certain measure of, I'm at the life stage of consuming resources, getting my education, building my identity, individuating and separating from parents and from social norms and deciding and making decisions for myself. Maybe that would be an appropriate life stage to really be thinking about compassion for self with the rigor and the challenges, as you probably do in your exams.
Yeah.
Not that you can't have compassion for out, but I do think it does help to develop resourcing and individuation before we teach everybody to be givers, especially for our young girls.
No, I agree. Yes. And it's really comes down to, you said it beautifully there, Michelle, because it's that in those years, it's that compassion for self. Because what I see working with adolescents is they're constantly comparing themselves to others, or it's the parents' expectations And parents don't even realize, myself included, how many expectations we put on our children. And it's not necessarily that we're saying something directly to them. It's what we're saying in general around them. Because then they pick up, oh, that's an expectation, and it's allowing our kids to be who they really, to grow into who they need to be freely. It's not so easy anymore because there's always that, what is it, the helicopter parent issue as well, right? Being too hands-on. It's like, oof, got to be a little more hands-off.
To allow and none of us live in a vacuum, right? We're also in social systems, in cultural systems, in systems outside of whatever was your or your husband's, upbringing. You're in another culture and another environment as well, and all of the isms that exist that cause pain and suffering. So we get to take a look at that. When it's hard,
Sorry, I was just saying that self-love is key. It really is.
Yeah. And so thank you for modeling that. And I'm assuming that through your beChill exams and life programs for youth, that you probably tackle lots of this. What's next for you? What are you thinking about? What are you promoting? What are you evangelizing or dealing with or constructing next or creating next for yourself?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Well, I've recently certified in the personal resilience indicators. So I'm working, this work with students is a passion, and I'm actually certifying other sophrologists. So I have a sophrologist in Australia, I've got another one in Switzerland, another one in the UK, and I'll have, I think, 4 or 5 more joining the program in the fall, so that the program becomes more a program for all schools. And then I've got some programs that we're starting to pilot in universities next fall. So this is great, all within this, because sophrology is relatively new in the English speaking language. So it's bringing that practice into sort of confidence building, resilience building, compassion, that sort of thing. So it's bringing that into the different schools, different levels. But as well, I'm moving into really working with professionals, probably more so with expat professionals, because that's what I know the most, right? It's professionals who, want to overcome different things that are happening in the workplace through building some resilience. So using different resilience tools with them and coaching them through that process to overcome some of those hurdles. And, there's a lot of decisions, especially for professional women. We have families to take care of. We have relationships with our husbands, but then there's everything that's going on in the office. So it's really working within that realm to help them overcome these issues. So.
Super. Well, I know you're also an active volunteer. I know that you're a founding member of the Inspired Women-led Global Women's Leadership Program, and we don't have time to cover it all on this. I do want to give you an opportunity for final comments, but I want to say for those who are interested in following Annette Ebbinghaus's work, you can find her at www.trulybalance.com. You can also, of course, connect with her on LinkedIn. We encourage you to connect on LinkedIn and to share the YouTube video when it is live on YouTube, and to make intelligent comments about these incredible, intelligent women like Annette and what you valued in listening to her. She's available on Instagram, Twitter, and of course you can contact her at Annette@trulybalance.com if you have any specific request or comment to make. So thank you so much for joining us for this call. Do you have last comments or thoughts?
Well, just one thing, I'm not the founding member of Inspired Women Lead, but I'm one of the charter founding members, just to be clear.
Very good. Active volunteer.
Yes, because Bonnie Fatio is the founder, and she's an amazing woman. Any parting words? It would really be about, I think to really move forward in your life, it is to look deep down inside and figure out sort of what or who do I need to forgive in order for me to really live freely. It is very, very powerful. And there's always something that's happened in our life where you think, yes, that was a turning point for me, but have you turned it in a good way? So it's to kind of go through that process because it's very liberating.
Super. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for sharing such incredible wisdom, both in your story in Inspired Journeys and also in this call with me. It has been a real pleasure to spend time with you. And for those tuning in, I hope you leave a comment and a positive remark on YouTube. We cherish your comments and your questions, and we get to them just as soon as we can. Thank you so much, Annette, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you, Michelle. You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.